In the quiet, I could hear the beep of a cell phone and then snatches of conversation. "He saw us, about like you'd expect. That would be good." When she came back out, she was fully dressed and carrying an overnight bag and makeup kit. "Now that you've forced the issue, I don't intend to stay here tonight. Frank's coming over to get me. We'll come back on Monday while you're at work and get the rest of my things." "So you're going just like that?" "It has to be that way," she said. "Fine," I said bitterly. "What do you want me to tell our friends?" She sighed. "Listen, Michael, Frank and I haven't done anything wrong, and we don't intend to hide away like criminals. We're going to continue to be active socially. In fact, we'll probably go to the Eden Point reception tomorrow evening. You won't have to tell anyone anything because they're all going to know about it anyway." Just then there was the beep of a horn outside. Melanie looked out the window. "Frank's here," she said. "I'm going now." As she was closing the door, she leaned back in to look at me. "Just sign the papers, Michael. The sooner you do, the better it will be for all of us." Then she was gone. I don't know how long I sat there. Emotions flickered through me like the cars of a train rushing through an intersection. One minute I'd be boiling with anger. The next I'd remember happier times and be filled with sorrow. I told myself I'd treated her like a queen. Then I wondered what I'd done to drive her away. "I'm better off without her," I repeated, until I was filled with loneliness. The tone from my cell phone startled me, and I quickly answered. Subconsciously, I think I was hoping to hear Melanie's voice, but it was Penny. "How are you doing, Michael?" she asked. "Not so good," I replied. "She's left me." "I heard," she said. "You heard?" I said in astonishment. "Where? How?" If you're enjoying my content, consider joining my Patreon community. By becoming a patron, you'll get access to full parts of my videos much earlier than everyone else. Plus, you'll be supporting me to create even more awesome content for you. Check out the link in the description to join now. "I'm sorry, Michael," she said sadly. "Frank's been up at the clubhouse boasting about it." "Oh shit," I thought. "It's already started." On Sunday, I called the captain of our men's team. There was no way I was going to go up there. "I'm sorry, Joe," I told him. "You're going to have to scratch me from the lineup today. I've got some personal issues to deal with." "Yeah, I heard," he said sympathetically. "Sorry about that. Good luck, man." I thanked him, but I knew all I had to look forward to was more bad luck. I spent the whole day inside. I guess I was hiding, though it pained me to admit it. The TV had sports on, but I wasn't paying attention. My thoughts kept drifting back to my marriage with Melanie. Where did it all go wrong? When did she stop loving me? I felt certain that she loved me when got married right out of college. We'd gone steady throughout our senior year. I'd asked her to marry me over Christmas break. She'd majored in health and physical education, and whenever my fraternity brothers would catch sight of her in workout clothes, they'd give me a hard time. She had that combination of cute, fit, and sexy that's almost irresistible. I gave up trying the minute I met her. We settled easily into married life. I landed a great job in Atlanta, and she found a job as an instructor at an aerobics class. After a few years, we'd saved enough money for a down payment on a house, and we found just what we were looking for in a brand new development called Eden Point. I thought that we'd been really happy here at Eden Point. I got several promotions with my company, and Melanie decided to strike out on her own. We had enough money by that time to lease space for her studio in one of the small strip shopping centers in the area, and her business did very well. Our savings account was growing. We had a host of friends and acquaintances, especially at Eden Point, and we had even started talking about starting a family in a year or two. Our lives had quieted down some, but that hadn't surprised me. My job kept me busy, and teaching Pilates every day will tire out anyone. As I thought back about it, I began to realize that things had really slowed down in the last 6 months, though I hadn't noticed it at the time. I also remembered that Melanie had seemed a bit distracted at times, as though she was off in another world. But when we had made love, it was as good for me as ever, and I had thought Melanie felt the same way. Obviously, I was wrong. I kicked myself mentally. How could I have been so blind that I didn't realize she had gotten involved with someone else? How could I not have been aware that she was falling out of love with me and in love with Frank Calhoun? The only thing I could figure was that when you love and trust someone else, you don't go looking for signs of treachery and deceit. No, I thought sardonically. You just have to wait until they dope slap you in the back of the head. I went into work early on Monday to try to get ahead of the game. Around 9 o'clock, I called the office of my attorney to try to make an appointment. When the secretary asked about the purpose of the meeting, I didn't want to get into the subject of Melanie and me, so I told her I needed to make some changes in my will. When she came back on the line, she told me he could see me right after lunch. When I got to his law office, Jonathan met me in the lobby. He had been a classmate of ours back in our undergraduate days, and I had gone to him when Melanie and I decided to have wills drawn up. After we were seated in his office, he looked at me with concern. Is everything okay, Michael? I understand you need to make a change in your will. You or Melanie aren't ill, are you? Thanks for your concern, Jonathan, but it's not quite that bad, I told him. Then I handed him the papers that Melanie had given me on Saturday. As he read them, he tissed to himself. When he had finished, he looked up at me. I'm really sorry to learn of this, Michael. Do you think there's any chance of reconciliation? I don't think so. She's already moved out of our house and moved in with her boyfriend. She told me that they plan to get married as soon as our divorce is final. He shook his head. I would never have expected this. You two seemed like the perfect couple. Then his expression changed and his voice took on a professional tone. Given those circumstances, as your legal advisor, my advice to you is to sign this agreement immediately. So, just like that, 10 years of marriage wiped away? I said bitterly. He shook his head patiently. In matters like this, Michael, you have to stop thinking with your heart and start thinking with your head. My read on this is that Melanie has made you a very generous offer, much better than you'd get if you decide to fight over it. Part of her motivation may be guilt, but I'd be willing to bet that the main reason is to give you an incentive to agree quickly so she can marry her new man. While it may feel like you're giving in to her now, the truth is that if your marriage is over, this is the best deal you can hope to get. I knew he was right. Hell, after what she'd done, I didn't want to stay married to her anyway. But it still felt like she and Frank had beaten me in a game I didn't even know I was playing. Jonathan's tone became sympathetic once again. Listen, Michael, I know the attorney that Melanie used. If you sign, we can get this settlement agreement filed with the court very quickly. That will pretty well lock in what she's proposed. Then, if she begins to have buyer's remorse and wants to come back, and if you're willing to take her back, you still have 30 days to drop the divorce. I knew that wasn't going to happen. Can I borrow your pen? I asked. When I got back to the office, I headed straight for human resources. I had lots of changes to make in my health insurance, my 401k plan, and numerous other benefits that involved a spouse. The clerk who helped me must have done this a lot because he was able to produce all the forms I needed in short order. As I was signing them, I glanced up to see him staring at me. I guess I won't have to make an announcement in the office now, I thought wryly. On the way home that evening, I stopped at a neighborhood restaurant and picked up some dinner to go. But when I got home, I found that Melanie had been there during the day and packed up everything she wanted. Of course, all of her cosmetics had disappeared, but I was surprised to find a number of items of clothing left behind. However, when I examined them more closely, I realized that they were things she didn't wear anymore. I guess I get to haul them off to Goodwill, I thought morosely. Further investigation revealed that the bedroom was not the only place she had raided. Our good china was gone, along with most of the serving pieces we'd received as wedding presents. From the kitchen, I noticed that a number of utensils and our set of good carving knives had also been carted off. Several pieces of furniture were missing, and when I went into the den, I saw that large chunks from our CD and DVD collections were also gone. As I prowled through our belongings, I noted that she'd left our wedding album untouched. Somehow that was more depressing to me than all the things she'd taken with her. It was as though she wanted to expunge any memory of life with me. I went back in the kitchen and stashed the food I'd bought in the refrigerator. I had no appetite left after discovering her incursion. I made myself a mental note to have the locks changed. Damn it to hell. How do you go from being happily married to a single, lonely, divorced man in 3 days? I asked myself. It all seemed so damned unfair. I spent the next week in virtual isolation, starting work early and leaving late every day. Otherwise, I stayed in the house. The humiliation of having Frank Calhoun steal my wife was excruciating, and the fact that there was nothing I could do about it was almost unbearable. I'll admit that I entertained fantasies about assaults with a baseball bat or brass knuckles. Other times I daydreamed about hired killers and car bombs. But then I'd come back to the real world. Did I really want to ruin my own life just to get back at a skirt-chasing sleazeball and a wife who couldn't keep her legs together? By Friday, I decided it was time to come out of my cocoon. I'd done nothing wrong, and there was no reason for me to hide. I called Penny. "Hey, partner, don't we have tennis match scheduled for this weekend?" I asked, trying to sound upbeat and positive. "Oh, Michael, I'm so glad to hear from you," she said quickly. "I thought about calling you so many times, but I thought maybe you'd prefer to be alone for a while." "Thanks, Penny," I replied, softening my tone. "It's been a rough week." I went on to tell her everything that had happened. Then I asked her what was going on at Eden Point that I'd missed. She hemmed and hawed for a few seconds before admitting that our situation was the talk of the subdivision. "You'd think they could find something better to discuss," I said sharply. "They might," Penny allowed. "But Frank and Melanie don't make it easy. They've been socializing at the clubhouse every night since last Saturday. Frank is all but openly bragging about how the better man won, and Melanie hangs on him like an infatuated schoolgirl." I could hear the anger in her voice. "It's just sickening, Michael." I quit her Pilates course straight away and told her I couldn't be her friend anymore, she said. Her loyalty made me feel a little better. "What about the others, Penny? What are they saying?" I asked. "I guess it's what you'd expect, Michael. There are some who are pretty unhappy with Frank and Melanie, and they try to avoid the lovebirds as much as possible. Then there's the group that always hang around Frank. They're all lauding his prowess, if you know what I mean. But for the majority of people, it's just a sad, awkward situation, and they try to stay out of it as much as they can." Rationally, I'd known that that would be the situation, but a part of me had wished the community would tar and feather Frank and Melanie and ride them out of town on a rail. But I was determined not let my disappointment hold me back. "Be that as it may, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in hiding," I told Penny. "We're scheduled to play on Saturday, and unless you'd rather not, I intend to get out on the court with my partner," I told her. "I'm glad, Michael," she told me fervently. "You can count on me." I deliberately drove over to the tennis courts a little late so as to avoid conversations about topics I didn't want to discuss. It didn't help much. As I walked up to the tennis pavilion, I could feel the eyes of my neighbors and teammates on me. I could understand their curiosity, but I still hated the feeling. Full part already available on my Patreon.